All right, let's run through it. Week 3 is done. So we got my Texas Longhorns leapfrogging Georgia, which is very interesting. Now, that's mostly not because how dominant Texas was, because they beat UTSA handily. Arch Manning got to play quite a bit, 3 quarters. Pretty much 3 quarters, because Quinn Ewers went out with an injury at the beginning of the second quarter. Like, they went on to dominate UTSA. Like, they could have just handed the ball off about 1,000 times in that game. They probably would have won easily. So it wasn't a big deal. Quinn Ewers apparently has a strained oblique, not like a tear or anything like that. If that would have been a tear, that would be a disaster. But dude, Texas came out and rolled. Like, they gave up one big play on defense, which is what UTSA scored on a running play off the left side. So it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't a big deal. But people saying, "Oh, Arch Manning should be starting now." Like, no. Arch Manning looked good. He had a 67-yard touchdown run, which was the longest since Vince Young against Oklahoma State in 2005. Crazy, almost 20 years that a quarterback has had that long of a run at Texas. But yeah, I mean, honestly, the way Arch looked in that game, he should not jump over Quinn for starting. But the thing I'll say is that is a huge like recruiting tool for Sark and his staff, because oh my gosh, like they were able to say, hey, you want to come here, you want to develop, you want to look good. This is how you look good. Trust the process. Even Arch Manning is trusting the process. Look how great he is. Yes, he could go somewhere else and play somewhere else, but would he look that good? Arch Manning could probably start on all of maybe 5 rosters in the country. Dude, things looking really good there at Texas. Georgia, I tried to watch as much of this game as I could. I want to catch more of the second half than anything else. I don't really know if Georgia should even have won that game, but they did. Anyways, they pulled out a 1-point victory, and Kentucky always plays them tough. And if you want to say that Kentucky's a good team, I'm not going to talk much about Kentucky, but the way that Kentucky played in that game, you would think that they'd be like a top 10 team. Like, there's no reason why Georgia should be struggling that much against an unranked team. Now, maybe we'll see Kentucky jump up in the rankings. They had a disaster in week 2, from what I know. I didn't see that game. I think they played South Carolina, so yeah, I think Georgia's more lost their confidence. I was not big on Carson Beck coming into the year. The only reason why a lot of people are very high on him is he plays for Georgia, and it's very easy to play quarterback at a very prominent university where every starting lineman is a 5-star. Every skill position is basically a 4 or 5-star. So it's easy to do that. And I know people are going to say, oh, but what about Texas? But Quinn Ewers over the past 3 years has kind of had to develop Texas to be where they are. Remember, 2 years ago they were not knocking in the top 10, right? Ohio State week off. I don't know if they're the third best team in the country. Honestly, I think the third best team in the country is going to be like right here, and it might be Tennessee. I'll be curious to see more about Miami. Miami's going to play in the ACC. We're not going to probably find out how great of a team Miami is. If they just keep playing as consistently dominant. Oh, fuck it. Let me just keep going in order, man. I'll jump around too much. I'm fucking retarded. I'm fucking retarded, man. I can't fucking help it. Ohio State with the week off. Yeah, I'm not too high on them, but they might be the best team in the Big Ten. We'll find out about that. I mean, a lot of people are going to be like, oh man, they have so much talent. They do have a lot of talent. So I'm not big on their quarterback, Howard. I mean, he came from Kansas State. He was transferred from Kansas State. We'll see. He might have got better, but I mean, it might work out there. I think they might be really good next year. I don't know what Will Howard's like situation, if he's going pro at the end of the year or not. But that team with their man, I forget their freshman receiver. He looks good. Like, he looks like a junior. So they might be really good next year. Alabama, Dude, it's Alabama. They haven't really played anybody. I mean, they played Wisconsin, was their toughest game this past weekend. Yeah, there's no reason why they should be struggling much. The final scores are looking good for Alabama, but the actual gameplay is not looking good. Like, it's looking a little bit more competitive than what it should be. So we'll see. Ole Miss, a lot of people starting to turn some heads here towards Ole Miss. They did get a lot of transfers this past year. Be curious to see how that goes. Tennessee also looking pretty good. So this is where I think the third best team in the country is probably sitting. Alabama, Ole Miss, Tennessee, in my opinion, over Ohio State. But we'll see. Missouri also looking pretty good. Just haven't really played anybody. They played Boston College this past weekend. It kind of handled them. It wasn't really all that competitive. Miami, everybody's wanting Miami and the U to be back. The U, right? So we'll see. They're not going to play much of anybody this year because they play in the ACC, and that's about it. I think they. Let me just check their schedule real quick. I don't think they play anybody tough, really. They'll get Louisville. Like, this is their schedule. Like, nobody. They played Florida, and they beat the crap out of them, but Florida's garbage, man. That actually might look like a close game now because Florida looks so bad. And they don't play anybody else. Florida State is awful. You thought that was going to be a real tough test for Miami, but that's looking like that might be the easiest game on their schedule now. Louisville, like, Miami's strength of schedule might be one of the worst by the time it's all said and done. It might be one of the worst. So yeah, Miami not looking like they're going to get contested at all in that ACC. We'll see what happens when they play in the championship for the ACC. Oregon finally showed something. I'm not big on Dylan Gabriel. I'm not too big on him, mostly because I haven't seen consistency throughout his college career. And I do know it because, well, I saw him play at Oklahoma quite a bit last year. But if they can land him on more consistency, especially throwing the ball, then maybe we could talk about Oregon looking somewhat decent. I know they looked pretty good this past weekend, but you also played Oregon State, so shut up. Penn State, yeah, I don't know. I mean, Penn State's had good defenses over the past several years. They probably have a somewhat decent defense. I have not been able to see them at all. I don't really hear anybody talking about Penn State looking super impressive, and you see that they actually did drop. I mean, I don't even think they played this past weekend because I didn't see anything about them. I'll be looking to see them play a game. I haven't been able to. USC also looks kind of impressive. They didn't play this past week. I think they got the Notre Dame Fighting Irish coming up. No, Michigan. Michigan's the one they got coming up. So they got Michigan this weekend. That'll be a big one. That's going to be the big one. Honestly, I haven't gotten to Michigan. I'm not going to get there yet. But I would expect USC handles Michigan pretty easily, even as they're going to the big house. So USC, show me something. I mean, LSU, beating LSU week 1. LSU might not be all that. Utah Utes. Dude, if they could keep Cam Rising healthy, they might actually be legit. Like, not even legit to compete for the national championship, but maybe to win a 12-team playoff game or something like that. But dude, if they can't keep Cam Rising healthy, Jesus. I don't know how much I would trust them to even win the Big 12. Big 12 is going to be pretty competitive within itself. I don't think a real competitive in the college football playoff aspect. Kansas State also. I watched a little bit of the Kansas State game, and I forget who they played. Oh my gosh, who did they play? Arizona. That's right. They played Friday night. They beat Arizona, and it looked. The takeaway from that game was, man. Who's their damn quarterback? Avery Johnson. Yeah. Avery Johnson, their quarterback. He looked pretty good. I think you might be happy that Will Howard left. Not too high on Will Howard for who's at Ohio State now, but Avery Johnson was doing pretty good. Oklahoma State, I know a lot of people are kind of high on Oak State. Not really seeing the consistency there for Oak State. So yeah, I don't know if they're going to win out the Big 12. Honestly, I think the Big 12 might come down to just these two right here: Utah, Kansas State, and it might determine a lot. Cam Rising, if he stays healthy, that might be the Big 12. How I think the Big 12 kind of gets determined. Oklahoma has been quite the letdown, even though they're still undefeated. So I mean, they're starting to look better under Brett Venables. Obviously, they're gonna have a pretty good test this weekend when they get Tennessee. Tennessee's going to Norman, and then here in a few weeks they're gonna get to go play Texas, and then they have a pretty tough schedule, man. That is a tough, brutal schedule. So they get Tennessee, Texas, Ole Miss, Missouri, Alabama, LSU. That is like the gauntlet. My God, they might have a losing record at the end of this. My goodness. I mean, South Carolina's not going to be an easy game either. I mean, Jesus, that is brutal of a schedule. The SEC did not hook them up at all on that schedule first year in the conference. My goodness, that is brutal. LSU, they got the win. South Carolina looking like they should have lost that game, and there was a pick six in the last 6 minutes of the game, or roughly around the 6-minute mark. And number 5 on the defense for South Carolina hit the quarterback when the quarterback was making a move to go towards the interception and try to make a tackle. And it was flagged by 3 refs. I don't know why that it was flagged. It wasn't like an egregious hit. LSU won it, man. I mean, they got the win. I don't know if they should have. That pick six pretty much would have sealed the game for South Carolina, because South Carolina was up at that point in time, I believe, by 4? Question mark. I believe 4. I don't know about LSU, man. They need to like get it dialed in. That might be, and honestly, that might have been a game that kind of woke them up, got them dialed in. That might have been it, because they were down 17. You got to give them credit. They came back. So, but there was some crazy amount of flags in that game too. You said it was a nail bite? Yeah, dude, it was a nail bite. We was robbed. South Carolina. I totally forgot you're in South Carolina today. We was robbed, man. Them LSU Tigers just came over here and they just snatched off victory. So you need to pay off the gambling debts. Yeah, you check into them officials, bud. You check into them officials. Notre Dame. All right. I didn't really go through this last week, and I kind of wanted to, but man, there was so much kind of going on last week. Notre Dame, dude, losing to Texas A&M. And I'll get to Texas A&M towards the end here, but Notre Dame should not be ranked. Losing to Northern Illinois, who's also in the top 25, is not something that warrants you being ranked in the top 25. You lost at home to an unranked Northern Illinois. By the way, what a great freaking game. But they did come out this week and they kind of dominated Purdue. I don't know how much I really trust Notre Dame. And I think I also, even on the right side over here, yeah, Notre Dame loses 2 starting linemen for the season. Dude, that is not what you want if you're Notre Dame. Because one of the things that you can really count on if you're a big-time program playing against a lot of smaller teams, like Notre Dame's going to play against a lot of teams that they should just be more talented than a lot of games, right? Going forward, like Miami, Ohio, Louisville will be a good one, but Stanford, Georgia Tech, Navy, Florida State, Virginia, Army, like you should easily just be able to line up and hand the ball off. But now that you got two starting linemen now out for Notre Dame shouldn't be ranked. The only reason why they're ranked is because it's Notre Dame. That's the only reason why they're ranked. They're not going to win any against any team in the top 25. They'll probably wind up losing to Louisville. That might be an interesting one, but they'll probably wind up losing that one, and they're going to lose to USC. They're going to lose to USC. There is no reason why Notre Dame should be ranked. Michigan, finally getting to Michigan. So one of the things I would have said this last week about Michigan after that Texas drubbing, dude. All Michigan needs to do is kind of like what I just said about Notre Dame. Your quarterback situation is freaking awful, and that's even after coming about the game that y'all just had this past weekend. past weekend against Arkansas State, my grandfather's alma mater. Dude, 28-18. Your quarterback situation was so bad. Like, I forget who's starting for you guys. Heard his story, walk on and all that. It's cool, great. But man, he made some horrible throws. And the best time Michigan was looking during that game against Arkansas State this past weekend was when you were handing the ball off. And that's all I would have said you would be doing this entire year, is just handing the ball off. Hut, hand the ball off. Hut, hand the ball off. And that's all you do. You just go get your 8-9 wins. You're going to lose to all your ranked teams. You're going to set up some play action pass, some rollout, dump off passes, that kind of stuff, because you're not going to rely on your quarterback just a 3-5 step drop and read a defense and throw it, because he's also really bad at just throwing the ball. Yeah, Michigan not looking good. The whole ranking system is crazy. Yeah, dude, the other thing about the ranking system so far this year is we haven't really had a lot of top tier matchups that sometimes you get in the non-conference schedule to start the year. We've had like 3 or 4 that would have been somewhat interesting, like Notre Dame, A&M, but both of those programs look like they suck. And then LSU, USC was maybe about the other one, and then Texas, Michigan. Those were like the 3 that I can really think of that were like, oh man, those were some okay, at least kind of non-conference schedules. But other than that, man, there wasn't many. So it's like you still don't know about a lot of these teams. Still don't know. So there's going to be a lot of movement here over the next like 3-4 weeks. I'd imagine as we get into conference play and you start to really see how good some of these teams are. Louisville have yet to actually see them play a game. The one thing I will say is they will be playing Notre Dame coming up here in 2 weeks, and they will then get Miami as well. See if Clemson finally turns a page, but Notre Dame, that'll be their first real test. I'll be curious to see. I know Louisville has a really cool stadium. Papa John's Stadium is really, really kind of neat. I went there once when I was in basic training. Anyways, so that is one reason why Louisville is actually near and dear to my heart. Not going to say they're going to go to the playoff or anything like that, but hopefully they have a good season. They'll probably beat Notre Dame, I'd imagine, here in 2 weeks. Iowa State, I really like their head coach. I don't know crap about their team, other than the fact they knocked off Iowa last week. Look forward to maybe seeing them in Big 12 play. See how they do. Clemson, I like how they get absolutely slaughtered by Georgia, which a lot of teams are going to get slaughtered by Georgia, except if you're Kentucky? Question mark. Anyway, Clemson kind of just got manhandled by Georgia, but then bounced back, had a really good game against who? App State. App State, which, usually App State's like wanting to knock people off. Anyways, I'm not going to say Clemson's going to be competing for any kind of championship or any even playoff this year. Obviously, Dabo Swinney's a good coach, but yeah, they got to make some adjustments on how they do recruiting. Obviously, Dabo's been under fire for how much he is not using the transfer portal and is losing to the transfer portal. So, yeah, we'll see if they make adjustments there. Nebraska. Okay, so a lot of people were not sure about Nebraska. Understandable. Nebraska over the past 25 years has mostly been irrelevant. 20 years or so. I'd say 25 years. Kind of irrelevant. And Nebraska, except for when they had Ndamukong Suh. Except for that. They have really surprised some people with how well Dylan Raiola looks. And I believe he is a true freshman. Yeah. Looks like he's a true freshman. So the thing is can they keep it rolling? They beat Colorado last weekend. They kind of controlled that game pretty well. I'd be curious how well they do when they get into real Big Ten play. Obviously, they'll probably play Michigan. That should be an easy game. But when they play, Ohio State, I don't even know if they do play Ohio State. What is their schedule? Oh, yeah, they'll play Ohio State and USC. And they got to go to both of those. They got to go to Ohio State and USC. And I'd imagine Iowa and Wisconsin are probably not going to be all that easy either. But they'll probably have a winning schedule. They should have easily a winning schedule. They look like they're probably on the right trajectory. Probably just don't have the depth and full roster build out of talent you're going to need to compete in a top 10 level. But I would expect them to probably be in the teens when it's all said and done, mostly just losing to like the teams that are really kind of competing in the college football playoff kind of slots. Northern Illinois so far with the biggest win of the year, going into South Bend and beating Notre Dame Fighting Irish. That was awesome to see, not even just for a fan perspective. It's always fun to see like the top teams kind of get knocked off, especially from nobodies. That's always fun. Kind of get some vibes of the Michigan App State game back from like 2006 or so, 2007, whenever that was. So that was really cool. The emotion from the coach on the field afterwards was pretty awesome. Northern Illinois, if they can run the table, obviously I'm not even going to worry about looking at their schedule. They'll probably play a whole bunch of teams in their conference for the rest of the year. But if they can run the table, this is who will probably wind up getting the Group of 5 bid to go to the college football playoff. It won't be Memphis. I've also heard UNLV right there. I don't think those neither one of these two have wins as high quality as Northern Illinois. Northern Illinois went into not even a Power 4 school now. I guess Power 4s, not a Power 4. They went into like a premier program and won at their place. It's pretty good, man. It's hard to shake that one off the resume. That is how you get into the college football playoff right there. Northern Illinois, probably going to be rooting for them for the rest of the year, honestly. Illinois. So Illinois. Now we're going to get into Big Ten play. We'll see how Illinois does. The Illini. Haven't seen them play. I didn't even realize they'd be ranked. Texas A&M. This is going to kind of talk about Notre Dame as well. But Texas A&M had a losing record last year. They changed their coach. Why were they even ranked in the top 25? But they're Texas A&M. Texas A&M has never been good. Look it up. It's facts. If you look up never good, you're going to see Texas A&M. I know that. I'm from Texas. The worst years they have are the years they say they're going to do the best. And until Texas A&M can show that they have some kind of consistency, and I'll say this, they did play Florida this past weekend, and their backup coming into the season started. Marcel Reed, I'm assuming is his name. Marcel Reed. He looked good. He was out there running. He was throwing some good passes. I wasn't able to watch the whole game, but the parts I saw, man, he was doing really good. I would imagine he's the starting quarterback going forward. And he's a freshman. And I got my aunt I talk to every week after the Aggies play. So I hear about it from an A&M fan. She's an avid Aggie fan. A&M, start that Marcel Reed going forward. Connor Wegman or whatever his name is, he's back up. He is awful. He was awful. That A&M Notre Dame game, that was the battle of which quarterback is not going to lose this game. That's what that was. And Notre Dame only wound up beating A&M because they busted 2 runs that set up 2 touchdowns. That was it. That was the only reason why Notre Dame won that game. It wasn't because they beat A&M. Like, dude, A&M was not good in that game. Neither of those quarterbacks were good in that game. So A&M looking pretty good. If they keep that quarterback, if he remains the starter going forward, I think they'll be looking pretty good. They'll be doing a lot better. The defense was looking a lot better from what I've seen from A&M this year compared to last year. The defense is looking pretty good, but Mike Elko is the defensive coach, so I would expect their defense to be looking a little bit better. Anyways, A&M, we'll see if they keep that quarterback on the field. I mean, there's gonna be learning curves. He's a freshman, but man, he looks way better than Wigman. So that is what I think about the top 25. All right, so what we'll do actually at the end, after we go through the top 25 every week, we'll just look at the top, the 12 team playoff. And the reason why I say we're going to do this is because a lot of us, it's something to do, right? It's just something to do. It's something to have fun. And we can actually see where teams line out. Because I've seen a lot of people talking about the 12-team playoff, the top 12 teams, and they throw in a group of 5 team at the 12th spot. But yet, they have 1 through 11 completely wrong because, well, we know 3 SEC schools are not going to be in the top 4. So, we're going to start, and we're just going to look at that. Right now, number 1 is Texas. All right. What is number 2? Number 2 is University of Georgia. Or Georgia. Put in Georgia there. So there you go. That is number 2, right? That's how most people have number 2. That is not right. Remember, Georgia will not be able to be slotted at 2, 3, or 4 if Texas is going to be number 1. They, and why this is so important, would be the 5 seed. That is right. So this is why it is so important. Not even the intra-season game. That championship game between, right now you can say Texas, Georgia. Most likely I would imagine Texas is probably there. Georgia is going to be playing Alabama, so that'll be a tough one. I would say, yeah, we'll be looking kind of tough there for Georgia right now because they still got to play Alabama and Texas both. As far as number 2, well, this is going to be Ohio State. I don't know why I said Ohio State. We're going to say Ohio State. Where'd the U come from? So Ohio State, number 2. That is how it's actually going to line up, right? So number 3, I believe right now, the way it's lined up, I believe this is Miami. The U, Miami. Let me check that real quick. I believe it's Miami. So rolling down. Miami, number 8. There you go. That would be the 3 seed. As long as they won the conference championship, all that. And then as far as the 4 seed, well, you're moving down, still looking for a team outside of the SEC, outside the Big Ten, outside the ACC, and you came across Utah. Obviously, you can pick Utah, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, but you notice here with these 3 schools, they are all right there, right outside that 12th spot. This is why it is going to be very important to make sure you win that conference championship there in the Big 12. So Utah, we will slot them in. We'll just use the AP Top 25 every week. It's fine to do this. Miami, and then we got Utah. That is a big difference. Remember, Utah, I believe, is the 12 seed on the AP. They would actually be number 4 for the playoffs. That is a big deal. Big deal. Utah. Then we start to fill in after the conference champions, right? So we've got Ohio State and Texas in there. We got Georgia in there at 5. You can say Alabama and then Ole Miss. Whew, 6 and 7. Bro, it's going to be littered with SEC teams. So 6, Alabama. 7, Ole Miss. 8, Tennessee. That is right. Tennessee. Currently. I think they're going to be better than that, but, that's for now. It's where we got them. I'm just going to abbreviate you as 10. And then who we got at 9? So Tennessee is locked in. Then we're going to have Missouri and then Oregon. So Missouri and then Oregon. So Tennessee, looks like you will be playing Missouri. Mizzou. I'll spell it out. There we go. So there you go. Missouri. 9. So Missouri, Tennessee be playing. All right. There you go. And then who's after Missouri? Oregon. So there you go. 10 would be Oregon. Oregon Trail. The GOAT game, right? So there's Oregon. Then we got Penn State. Ooh, Penn State. USC looking on the outside as of now. Will that be like that when we get to the end? Will it be that way when we get to the end? Ooh, man, that'll be interesting. Penn State. And then, however you want to kind of fill in group of 5, I will put Northern Illinois because I think they right now have the best quality win. Dude, that quality win over Notre Dame in South Bend, that's going to be really tough to beat, man. As long as they win out, like there's no one else that's going to be able to touch them. Is this the way I think it'll be at the end when we get to selection day? Probably not. So there you go. This is probably the way it's going to line out. And remember, it does not reseed as they go through the playoffs. So the bracketing is how the bracketing is. So whoever wins advances in that line of brackets. So right now you got Texas, Ohio State at 2, Miami 3, Utah 4, all right? And then you got Georgia 5, you got Alabama 6, Ole Miss 7, Tennessee 8, Missouri 9, you got Oregon 10, Penn State 11, and Northern Illinois 12, playing Georgia first round. Woo! Talk about drawing an ugly stick, man. But that's probably the way it's going to be for whoever gets that group of 5. Like, you're not going to play a crappy team. You're probably going to play the second best team in the country because it's going to come out of the SEC, right? It's going to come out of the SEC. So you're probably just saying, hey, SEC is probably going to be at the number 1 spot or whatever it is. Maybe they all kind of knock each other off. And so you got an SEC at number 3, maybe even 2 or 4. But it doesn't matter. You're probably going to face the second best team in the country right there at number 5. But that's why winning those conference championships are going to be so damn important. For the Big 12, just to even get seeded, it's going to be huge, important. And you're going to get the 4 seed. Most likely. I mean, we'll see. But you'd be getting a first round bye just for winning there in the Big 12. And then for the SEC and even Big 10, you're looking for a first round bye and potentially like a number 1 seed instead of having to play that week or about 5 days before Christmas or something like that. So that's going to be a huge deal. Those conference championship games are going to be massive. And and just so you know, the big reason why they did have a first round bye and they didn't do an 18 playoff mostly has to do with, well, you're going to have 8 teams out of the, Power 4 conferences play conference championship, right? 4 conferences, 4 championship games. You're going to have 8 teams. So you're going to have 4 teams get the conference champion week off. They're just going to go straight to the quarterfinals. That way, they don't play nonstop. They're not playing championship weekend and then first round. It gives them, because they're already playing, right? There's a lot of teams going to be mixed in here in between 5 to 12 seeding that will not be playing that weekend of conference championship. Okay, so there might be only 2 teams that make it. Right now, the way it's looking, there's only going to be 2 teams playing that conference championship weekend from like the SEC or Big Ten. The only one that's going to get really outed is going to be that group of 5 team that makes it, because they are going to have to play, well, their conference championship game and then turn right around and then go right into playing into the 12-team playoff bracket. So that's kind of where it's going to really shaft that team more than anybody else. And then whoever loses the conference championship, which, for this purposes, we would say maybe it's Georgia. Georgia would play conference championship weekend, maybe against Texas. They lose. They're the 5 seed. Ohio State, maybe they play against Oregon or Missouri. And then so they would have to turn around, but they lost. They don't get the bye. They would have to turn around. That's why there's a bye. Anyways, most of these teams in that first round wouldn't be playing in that conference championship weekend. It's going to be an interesting week, but that is how right now the 12-team playoff seeding sits. Will this be the way it is when we get to the end of the year? Probably not. This isn't accounting for Miami, who's looking really good. USC, who's looking really good. Yeah, outside of that, those would be the 2 teams I'd say probably wind up making it in over some of these others. Like Penn State, probably not. Oregon, ooh, that's gonna be a tough one with Oregon. Oregon, if Dylan Gabriel can be somewhat consistent going forward, maybe they wind up getting in there. But USC, Miami are probably the 2 for me that are missing off of this list.